Hi, Sachsenhausen. Kolonia gwarna, parna, Germania richtig dicker Heil. Sachsenhausen. Wirtycie jak bambusik, trupie łebki to kaktusy heil. Es lebe kule der Kampf.
Welcome to Descendant Stuff, a podcast by and for the descendants of Sachsenhausen prisoners, working together to uncover the unanswered questions of its history. Sachsenhausen was a Nazi concentration camp located in Oranienburg, Germany, used from 1936 through April 1945. It was used as a labor camp, with a network of subcamps and worksites around the region, as well as a prison camp, death camp, medical experimentation center, and SS training ground. It was also the administrative center for all Nazi concentration camps. We are Jakob, Kelsey, and Nicole, three descendants of Sachsenhausen prisoners. Though our relatives were imprisoned for different reasons, we've discovered we have much in common. In each episode, we interview other descendants, researchers, and even survivors, sharing stories, memories, and research to build a clearer picture of the past, one that goes beyond the records. Through these conversations, we honor those who suffered and died at Sachsenhausen and strengthen our collective understanding of our own ancestors' experiences. This episode was recorded during the commemoration for the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Sachsenhausen in our podcast studio in Tower A, with special assistance from the Sachsenhausen Memorial and Museum. Salomon Bertram and his son Robert were born in Krakow, Poland, and were imprisoned in Sachsenhausen on October 17, 1944, where they remained until the liberation during the Death March in 1945. Robert's son, Michael Bertram, came with his family from Israel to Sachsenhausen for the 80th anniversary of the liberation, where Kelsey had a chance to meet him and talk to him about his family's story.
I would like to start out hearing who was your relative here. What can you tell us about them?
My father and my grandfather were here. And my father's name during the Holocaust was Robert Bertram. He changed his name after he made Aliyah. He moved to Israel. His name was Reuven Bertram. And my grandfather's name was Salomon Bertram. And his Hebrew name was afterwards Shlomo Bertram. They were in Sachsenhausen since October 44 until liberation in 2nd of May 45. My family came from Krakow, Poland. They were born in Krakow, Poland. And my father had a sister and a mother who were killed during they were living in the ghetto Krakow. I got all this information during the last 2 years. I started to look for information about my family during the Holocaust. And my father died when I was 9, so I didn't hear from him any stories about the Holocaust. I didn't manage to hear. And my grandfather died before I was born.
You never heard the stories directly from them. You had to discover them.
Yes. So my first discovery was about 15 years ago. I met a good friend of my father from Krakow. I remember him when I was young. My father was a football coach and coaches, and my father used to take me on Saturday to see football matches. So I met him, it may be 15 years ago, I don't remember. He lived in Israel. And I got his name. There is someone in Israel. She's managing the community of Krakow, people from Krakow. I met with him. At those times, we didn't have those smart mobiles, so it was difficult. So I didn't record the conversation. Sadly, I thought maybe I will see him again. I don't know. It was this, but he gave me a book that he wrote. And my father is mentioned a few times. So this was my first source. And then about a year ago, I managed to get the testimony that my father gave in order to get compensation from the German government. It was during 54. So at those times, they needed to apply directly to the German government. Afterward, there was a change, and the Israeli government got an agreement with the German government and the compensation. The people who wanted to get compensation, like my mother, she asked for compensation later. She was hidden in France as a child. They applied for the Israeli authority for the survivor of the Holocaust, which is under the Prime Minister office, like authority. But then at those time, in the 50s, they needed to apply to the German. It was a very detailed, it's in German, and you see the quality is not very well. This gave me an amazing information. Then after a few months, I received also the declaration of my grandfather. Apparently, he also gave. It was quite difficult to get this because in German, there are various regions and everyone applied to a different one. They changed the font. It took me time, but I managed to get it finally. So a lot of information is here directly from him, from both of them. And so these are my sources. And also I met with a cousin of my father in Krakow, but this was when they were young in Krakow, but not from the Holocaust. Okay, so he didn't have information. So this is in the period of the Holocaust. So, and I did a lot of studies, so I managed to get this. This is very priceless information.
It's precious because he wrote it himself.
Yeah.
And he's telling, you're hearing it directly from him and you can see.
Yes. I will start to speak about his time in Krakow and then his time here, the period that he spent here in Sachsenhausen. They lived in Krakow, and since in my grandfather's testimony, the exact dates are written, which is amazing. It's from March 20th of March 41 to 15th of January 43, they moved to the ghetto. So they needed to move the regular houses for this place, which was bounded. And then he spent in Plaszow. My father, I believe, was maybe before he went to Plaszow, before him.
And what is Plaszow?
Plaszow is the concentration camp. When they finished the ghetto Krakow, they built the concentration camp in Krakow, next to Krakow. So this was Plaszow. This was a concentration camp. As far as I know, they built it on the cemetery. They destroyed the cemetery and built it.
So they removed all the citizens who were in the ghetto of Krakow.
Yes. Not all of them. Some of them were transported to other concentration camps, okay? But this is where they spent. And then in 17th of October 44, they were transported to Sachsenhausen here until the 2nd of May, and 20 and 21 of April, they arrived. They were next to the Baltic Sea. They were released like in 2nd of May, 45. Okay, and they spent apparently a week in the meadow forest with all the prisoners. So my father died at May 4th, 71. My father was born in 20 January 27. They had very good life and they were affordable. They, according to my grandfather testimony, had 2 jewelry stores. He was a watchmaker and jewelry store, so they were good. And they were educated. They also needed to emphasize this. They educated with German culture and they spoke German in their house, German newspapers, fairy tales, etc. in German. Everything was in German, even though it was in Krakow. So it was they were like in the upper level of the society, okay? According to the book. They grew up as kids in Krakow. They met after they needed to get familiar with new child.
Because they had moved to the ghetto.
The ghetto started at 41. So he was 14. Then they moved to the ghetto, which simple life.
Why were they moved to the ghetto?
They didn't have any choice. They were told to move. The Nazis moved all the Jews in a closed place to control them, to be able to control them.
Yeah.
So This guy, his name was Yannick. He described at the beginning of the book his his life, his family, which was not very easy. He didn't have very easy life in the family. He had a very close relationship with his mother, but not with his father. And the relationship between his father and his mother he was not very well. They were not very well together, and his father was a very difficult person. And also he had a brother. But I started with a section that they moved to the ghetto, and he started to speak about the new faces and the new people that he met. So he described all the names, and they had nicknames. Everyone has nicknames. And he says here, the best of them was Reuven Bertram. I called him Rebek. And he was an extraordinary. He was quite humble, and you can trust on him. And his he had a physical strength was tremendous, but he never used it to solve problems. That's what he says. So it means a misunderstanding or any problem. So the next section is when they started the Aktia. They started to deport people from Krakow to the concentration camp. Of course, they didn't tell him. They misled them, and they started to murder people, to send them for the concentration camp. Then he said that my father came and wanted to tell him goodbye because he received a notification to go to the Aktia. Okay. At that time, they needed to every few days to get and to sign a piece of paper to get a stamp that they can still stay in the ghetto. But the person that got no signature, he needed to go and attend the following day and to go with transportation with train to one of the concentration camps. Okay, so my father told him that his father hidden him for a few days in the shelter in the ground floor of their house under a pile of coals. After a few days, my father told his father that he cannot stay there anymore because he is endangering all the family. So he is going to attend. He told him goodbye, and then he said that when he closed the door, he started to cry at this Yannick. Okay, and after a few days, he had a knock on his door. Suddenly, he saw my father, which was amazing. My father told him that they were already in the queue, and in every train carriage, they loaded the 100 people, and suddenly a few commanders of the Nazis came. So he said then they picked up 8 people out of the thousands, and he were one of them. My father was one of them, which is amazing. Okay. And then they sent them back to the ghetto to get some clothes, and they told us to attend the Judenrat offices within 1 hour. So within 1 hour, he went to see Yannick as well on the way. And of course, he went to see his father as well. But it's amazing. He had 1 hour, and okay. So, and this is very important. This is one of the motives of the book. He says, he told Yannick, I just want you to know what happened, and be well, Yannick. Maybe we will meet up sometimes. And he told him, just remember. Of course, he told him that as long as we are alive, there is hope, something to hope for. And this is amazing, because if he told him remember, so he told him before. And he always got this phrase, and he motivated Yannick. probably he was weak or came with not very supportive family. So he wanted him to be strong, and I told him, be strong. And Yannick said, I nod with my head for his what he told me, but I was not at all sure that this statement could be hope for us. But for us, the Jew, we don't have any hope. But still, my father gave him. And then after a while, also they took Yannick also to, and then my father went to Plashov, okay, which was as we October 43. Okay, Yannick described the first day that he came to Plashov. Okay, and they were gathering in the rain, and it was cold. Outside of Plashov, there was a big gathering place. Yeah. And they were gathering in the Plashov, and it was cold, and he was hungry and thirsty, and he didn't have any energy. He was very weak. Okay, he said, I feel the hunger. He was so hungry. So and then he said, and then suddenly someone stood beside me, and it was Reuven with eye stroke. Okay, and he's here in this camp, and my feeling was suddenly improved. Okay, I was no longer so lonely. Okay, my father asked him, "How are you, Yannick? Are you surviving?" And it was a rhetorical question. Okay, and he told him, "Amazing." And how can I feel? Like he was very depressed. Okay, you know better than me. It is cold, wet, and I'm scared to death. And he spoke about the father of his girlfriend. He had a very good friend that he was murdered a few minutes ago. So they heard shooting. Okay, and my father told him, yes, he knows the one that were killed. It was one of the coolest murderer in the camp. Okay, and my father told him, Yannick, you better get used to this way of life as much as possible. This is an essential part to survive in this camp. Okay, it was in 43. Okay, so he was 15 years old. He's the one who supported him. He felt responsibility for him. So he told him, I bought you something to eat and to drink. And told him something that I could take off for for the small portions that we got. So he got a portion off, and he brought him, and he said, I save you as much as possible. It's amazing. I don't know how my father knew how to find him. He told him, I hope to bring you also a blanket and even a mattress, but first I need to know where will you live. And so probably they will tell you in a while. And he told him, if I'll manage to bring those things to you, it will help you very much, but be aware that it's very hard to keep them here. So he gave them introduction about the life here. They need to be, he tell everyone, or remember, anyone will try to steal them from you. Not only from you. Here, everyone steal from each other. And please remember, Yannick, now I need to go. I will see you in a while. I need to search my father. He is also supposed to come here today. Okay, so my father came to Plashov in October, in January 43, and my father came earlier in 42nd. And then Yannick says, my feeling was greatly improved. Then I started, I didn't feel so cold as before. Suddenly got warm from a piece of bread and a little bit of cold water. It got warm. So of course it's not because of the cold water because of the supportive. Yes, above all of these things, he felt suddenly good. He felt man, and he say, "I need to be strong and to fight with all of my energy or forces in order to survive." Okay, so my father always gave him messages. Okay, to be strong, not to lose hope. In the next chapter, he is already settled in the camp and is in his bed, and suddenly someone pulling his leg. When he tried to stand, he banged his head in the ceiling, and it was my father again. He brought him blanket and a mattress as he promised him. So he brought him this, and he say only God knows from where. He started to realize the term how to live in the camp, etc. Anything is a luxury, even every minute, every another minute of his life. Okay, and he says, "Thank you so much, Reuven. This is extraordinary. Thank you so much for everything." Okay, and my father pulled off his shoulder. He say, "This is not so much, but this is whatever I could do for you. And from now on, you need to stood on your feet." And he say, I am your good friend, Yannick. I'm a very good you good friend, but for your sake, remember, you need to fight. Fight every moment and moment with all of your soul. Otherwise, you are a dead man. He told him, "Remember, Strike, I warn you." And then he say, "Thank you, Ruben. Thank you for everything and for your advices." Okay. And then before he left him, he say, "This is the big difference. There is a big difference, Yannick. Now everyone for his own. Remember, if you want and prepare to fight, this is my advice. My advice you for your help, for your benefits. Okay, you need to remember that if you will give your hand for other people, for you will join." Okay, this was amazing. And he says Ruben finished his speeches, and then he went down and he left. Yannick was shocked because how can his soul friend, Reuven, his soul friend, such a wonderful person and partner for everything and to everyone, change so much? How can it be possible? This Yannick had a very, very good friend of him in the camp. And he said to his friend, "I could not believe that what he said. He thought that it was a time of weakness of my father that he gave him this advice to think only about himself and no one else. Otherwise he would drown." And then his friend Falk say in a very quiet voice, "He's right. For your own sake, you will behave as he told you. And maybe will be the only lucky person that will survive, but don't trust on it." And then he said that he continued to lay on his bed, and he started to and he tried to digest the wise talks that he heard from my father, and could be his hope to survive. Maybe after all they are right. And he told to his friend Falk, "I'm sorry about my strong words about my father," etc. And he told him, "But we will try to be good to each other, and it will be the opposite of my father." And then when I read it for the first time, I thought to myself, this is something not logic, because my father did exactly the opposite of his advice to Yannick.
Right, he helped Yannick out.
He helped Yannick out all his life. My father is the only person who brought him water and piece of bread and blanket and mattress. So this is exactly the opposite of his advice. So then I thought to myself, how can it be? I was surprised when I read it. How can it be that my father told him such thing? Of course, we cannot judge anyone, but how can it be that it's opposite than his behavior, the logic? When I first read it, we had a dinner Friday night at home. I have two daughters and my wife, Friday night, Shabbat dinner, and we spoke about it. And my older daughter, Metal, she had an idea. She said, it's like, think about when you go in an airplane, first, when there is an emergency situation, first you need to put the oxygen mask on your face and then to take care of your children, etc., etc. He tried to convince him to take care first of himself and then to the others. Before I gave the speech in the synagogue, the Dvar Torah, the speech, I also had discussion with our special rabbi at Shul, and he told me a wonderful idea that our rabbi name is Elisha Wolf, and he told me it's really emotional. Yes, he had this good idea that my father, even though they were at the same age, this is the thing that Yannick needed to hear, because Yannick was weak and my father was strong. And this is amazing because this is exactly my father. And then it repeats in the book that he quote again to his mother, and to his mother reminded him that as long as you live, you have hope. And also he quotes along the book, he quotes things that my father told him. Like, for instance, when they, at the end, when they were standing in the place before the being transported, or later, his father and his brother didn't even came to look for him, for Yannick. So he told him, this is like as before ages, that my good friend told me, Yannick, everyone to his own soul. So he knew that he came from a weak family, and he's not a strong person. He's so fragile. So this is what he needed to hear in order to survive. And this was the opposite of what he told him. Physically, materially, he helped him, and also emotionally, he supported him, which was exactly the opposite. So this is who my father was: humble and strong. My father, then he came to Israel in 1946. He was a manager, an operation manager in a factory. It was in 1971. And there was a problem of technician came to fix something in the roof. So he had some problem. So my father went, it was not his job. He went to help him. So, and he fell from the roof.
This is how your father died, was falling.
Yes, after going through the Holocaust, being in the army, being in the war, 67 war. So he was always trying to help people. So, and this is his help to Yannick, to tell him to only to think about himself. I remember that every Holocaust, in Israel, during the Holocaust, you have special programs on the TV on the evening of the Holocaust Day. And I remember my father sitting at the side with kind of alcohol, like cognac or something, and being quiet. He didn't speak. He was very quiet. He just looked at the TV programs. He said something and maybe intended to tell it when we were older or something like that. Probably it was the time that they came and pick up 8 people, because I remember something very vague with dogs, so something frightening, but it might be this case of 8 people that they choose.
That was maybe a story your dad briefly told when you were little?
Yes. He didn't speak with us. I remember that just before he died, he came to my class and he spoke in the Holocaust Day, but it was in the second grade or first grade, so I don't remember.
And maybe he wasn't telling second grade students the details.
Yes. Every 2 years I come to Berlin. There is a huge railway exhibition in Berlin. So this time I knew that I will come to Berlin, and I found out that according to the declaration, he was in Sachsenhausen. I didn't know at all. I was sure that he was only in Krakow and Plaszow. This is the cousin of my father told us he was in Plaszow, and that's it. I didn't know anything. So suddenly I found out that he was in Sachsenhausen.
So, what did the restitution paper describe?
They needed to go to a doctor. They needed to demonstrate that they had some medical impact, and they also were related to the Western German culture, because at that time, since they are Polish, they could not get a compensation in Germany from East Europe. So they needed to demonstrate that they have some German culture and the entire history, and there are people who knew them that also there is a notorion, and people who knew them and testified that they knew them in the camp or where they were a child, etc., etc., etc. So what I started to say, so I found that they were in Sachsenhausen, and I started to plan my trip to come to Berlin. The prisoner number of my father and grandfather. My father, his prisoner number was 107641. My grandfather's prisoner number was the one that followed it, 107642. So they were in queue, one after the other, okay?
Oh, and what was that day? The day that they arrived at Sachsenhausen?
17th of April 1944. So I wrote this was their prisoner number, and I want to see if you have anything in the library, if I can learn anything, etc. So, and then I came on Sunday while I was in the train coming to the camp here. I got a phone call. Someone told me, "Hi, I'm Michael Brown. When you come to the information, come and ask for Astrid Lay, which is the deputy manager of the memorial." And then I came and showed them the testimony, and I want to hear if they have more information about my father, etc. They told me we don't have anything. The Nazis burned all the evidence, all the records before they evacuated the camp. So we got information from the survivors, from the families. And she was so nice, and she took me the same day for 2 hours for the here and for a tour, and I asked questions, and I learned more and more.
What did you learn?
I asked her, why would they transport them from Plaszow to Berlin, from Krakow to Berlin? Why would they waste the money they could send them for one of the concentration that could kill them? And why would? Because my father and my grandfather and my father and then my father, they were watchmaker. And she showed me the barrack, the building of the watchmakers. It's double in size than all the others. Maybe we can see it from here. It might be this one, because of the watches that they stole from Auschwitz and all the jewelry. So they needed good labor, good workforce to repair them. So this is the reason they were safe, because of the profession. And I saw the side. There is one of in the exhibition. There is about the watchmaker. You can see inside in the exhibition about the section about watchmakers and jewelry. So
At some point, they must have mentioned that was their experience, and so they were pulled aside.
it's not in some point. They were also in Plaszow. Also, they were working as a watchmakers. So the Nazis knew that they are watchmakers. So this is the reason that they brought them here. It's not that when they came here they discovered. Otherwise, they would not transport them here.
Yes, yeah.
My father wrote that he walked every day. That he walked for 10 hours in the repairs for 10 hours, and then he walked for 2 hours to work, and so I thought, where did he stay? So Astrid thought maybe they wouldn't waste 4 hours a day if they could work. It doesn't make logic. There were satellite camps, but it was not clear. So I learned quite a lot of information. You see here in my father's CV, he described his CV. Okay, so I will read the important because from his word, it's better than to. It's like he's speaking. Okay, so my father had a watchmaker and jewelry business in Krakow, Krakowska. He also employed 2 apprentices, and he had the street that they live, which ran together. My grandfather and we were materially well off and led a prosperous life. Okay, until the outbreak of war, I was healthy boy and enjoyed playing sport. Okay, and then it started at the age of 13. I experienced all the horror of persecution, and from March 41 until liberation, at May 45, I was first in Krakow, a ghetto, then in the labor and concentration camp of Krakow Plaszow, which is Plaszow, and Sachsenhausen. Here I had to perform hard forced labor, living in human sanitary condition, suffer from terrible hunger, was exposed to cold and damper, etc. It's beaten, and this is an amazing thing that I read. Once I received 25 lashes on my head, eyes, and back from a guard, causing me to fall bleeding and unconscious. Afterwards, I was placed under a cold shower for an hour to be revived. At that time, my eyelid was severely injured. This happened while I was working in Zal, Krakow, Plaszow. Zal is the camp, okay? In the concentration camp. Sachsenhausen, here. While working, I received a heavy blow to the head from the SS man, which immediately paralyzed my left hand. I could not work quickly enough with one hand and received a blow to my right hand with a piece of iron, injured it, and even today the scar is visible. So I asked Astrid if after getting the hit on his head, he was slow and he was not efficient at work. And then they gave him another hit on the right hand. Why would they keep him alive? So she told me at that time it was just few months before it was the end of the war, so it was a mess here. So they didn't control it very much. It was already in 45 because I assume it was few months after he arrived here. So because it was a month, so this is also something that I learned. This is the assumption because why would they? So these are the two things. Why would they transport them here? Because they were watchmaker. Why would they, after being disabled, why would they keep them alive? Because it was a mess here. And still, if you can produce something, if you can contribute anything, because they have so many watches, so many jewelry, so they needed any labor, any qualified person. And he say in April 45, I was assigned to a marching column that we saw yesterday, the place, and was hunted on foot for almost 2 weeks, nearly without food, until I was finally liberated in May 45. Okay, and he said the place, and say what he suffered. Okay, a fever and horrible illnesses. During the action in Krakow ghetto in October 45, my mother and my sister Erna, his mother was Elena or Haya, and Erna or Esther, and were killed. My father endured the persecution with me. He died in Israel. Okay. Shortly after the liberation, I was in Lübeck, which was toward the end of the Dead March. It was in Lübeck. And then there were 1 year in a camp after the war. They still kept the people in a guard. for the entire year in Bergen-Belsen, which was before a camp. Then it was.
They were liberated into a camp.
Yes, to a camp, from where I immigrated to Israel via Belgium and France in 46. Okay?
From Bergen-Belsen is where he was able to immigrate to Israel through Belgium and France.
Yes, yes. And then as a result of the terrible experiences I went through at young age during the time of persecution, I am today a suffering person and am under constant medical treatment. And let's see here what is. This is only during his life in the ghetto. I had to wear a yellow star on an armband and was forced to work as a porter, a laborer on the construction site. And this is interesting. During Krakow, Plasov, the camp was surrounded by barbed wire and guarded by the SSS and Ukraine military. It was located in a Jewish cemetery. They built the Plasov camp. They just destroyed the Jewish cemetery and built the camp. I slept in a barrack, was forced to work in the field service as a weapon assembler, and later in the camp of locksmith shop. In Plasov, we already is in the locksmith shop. Yes. Every day I had to stand for long roll calls. The ration consisted of soup and bread. In Sachsenhausen, I received prisoner number. This is the prisoner 107642. And 41, 42 is my grandfather's prisoner number, as well as prisoner clothing. I was forced to work in a closed workshop of the SS for 10 hours daily as a watchmaker. To get to work, I had to cover a distance of about 2 hours to and from work each day. The food again consisted of soup and bread. And then again, at the end, he said that in April I was assigned to a marching column. I had to work for almost 2 weeks, always guarded by and driven by SS men, during which I received almost nothing to eat until I finally, at the beginning of May 45, reached Friedrich shore next to train, where I was met by Russian and liberated by American troop. So yes.
You walked like
So-
20
so-
miles, up to
yes.
20 miles a day
Yes.
with no food.
So when I saw here in the exhibition someone being lashed by SS, the famous picture that you can see here and all over, someone who is striped to a kind of stand.
They're
with-
strapped down.
Yeah, and with the lash. There is a famous picture here in the exhibition. Today, when I came here, I just thought, from the memorial office to the gate, coming here, there is a walk of 200 meters or something like that. So I thought, my father walked here every day, 2 hours. This is the way. This is the path. This is the path that he walked. And yesterday, I came here with my 2 daughters, Metal Bar and Nomi Baram, and my wife, Kim, Leslie Tracker Baram, and my son-in-law, Joy Bar. I was in the forest in September, but coming with the family. And then in the evening when we came to the hotel, I thought to myself, we walked yesterday in the place that they stayed for 5 days. They just stayed in this forest. So it feels more tangible when you are here. It's really tangible. Like you don't see the houses here, the barracks, but still you can feel the walk here on those pavements on this.
That means with your father, you're his father,
Yes.
and you and your daughters, that's 4 generations
Yes.
who have walked the
Yes.
same path.
Now I will speak a little bit about my grandfather's testimony as well, okay? Which I didn't know him. I feel so close to him, even though I didn't see him. I never seen him. But the fact that they were so lucky to be together, and my father was so lucky to be with his father all the time. I didn't have this feeling. He passed away when I was 9. And even being in such a terrible life, all of his difficult periods in life, he spent with his father together. This is an amazing relationship. Being both of them in the workshop, working together, I assume probably my father who knew how to manage and to get bread and water and mattress and pillow to his good friend Yannick, probably took care of his father in the same way. I'm sure that my being together, it was such a bonding to be together. It's I'm just thinking about now about this relationship which I didn't have. I had it only for 9 years, and he spent with his father all this. Not that I'm and not that I would want to be in such period, but he had some. They were together after such difficult when they lost their sister and mother, etc. After such a difficult, but the fact that they had the chance to be together, it's amazing. It's something very special for them, for both of them. They were lucky. So a little bit of my father, which is shorter a little bit, because I think I can see that it was completed also by maybe by my father, the testimony, because my grandfather died at the year of 56. The testimony of my father was finished. You can see 54. It was shorter than my father's testimony. We have the exact dates when he was from Krakow, as we started the discussion, exactly the date from ghetto Krakow from 20th of March 41 to 15th of January 43, then from 15th of January 43 to 15 October 44 in Plaszow, which is Zal Plaszow. It's the concentration club in Krakow, and Sachsenhausen from 17. Took them 2 days to arrive here, you can see, by the train, from 17 of October 44 to the 2nd of May when they were liberated in 45. Okay?
All the time with your father.
Yes, my father arrived to Plaszow in 42. He went to say goodbye to Yannick. My father hidden him. He went before. He didn't want to risk his family. So didn't get the certificate in the Krakow ghetto.
Okay, so he had to leave on his own, and later his father joined him.
He joined him in Plaszow later. So my father was in Plaszow from 42 already. My grandfather arrived in January 43. So my father went to Plaszow a few months before in 42. Exactly when, I don't have the date, but he managed by himself for a few days. If you remember when Yannick stood by himself, he told him he went to bring soup and bread to Yannick, and then he told him, I need to also to look about for my father. He's also arriving today. So they arrived together, which is amazing. Maybe he thought that my father would be stronger than Yannick, which was young. So he just wanted to save Yannick's life and give him something, because he knew that he was so weak and cold, etc. He might not be survived. So he wanted to assist him, despite if what he told him. And then he went to see my father. Maybe he trusted my father more than Yannick, that he will survive and he'll be okay. Amazing. I will read just a little bit. In January 1543, I was transferred to Plaszow. Until June 30, 1943, I worked in the garage, Auto Union in Krakow. And from July 1st, 43, I worked as a watchmaker in a workshop in Plaszow. The head of the workshop was Flourish, whatever. They always mention the name of the commander of the SS. Maybe they needed to report it in their testimony, okay? And it says in October 15, 44, I was transferred to Sachsenhausen. There too, I was employed as a watchmaker in a workshop. My prisoner number was 107642. So they stood together in the line because my father was first. So my father stood before him. My father, as Yannick described him, he was strong, and this probably the reason that they took him When he was only 15, they took him. They took 8 people because they needed strong people to work in the ammunition, etc. So he was strong. So my father stood before him in the queue. He guarded him. He guarded him, which is amazing. Usually the strongest feel stay before. So this is another clue. My clue, my understanding. Okay. In April, we were evacuated from Sachsenhausen and were liberated by American and along the way near Lubeck. Okay. And again, after my liberation, I was in Lubeck and in Bergen-Belsen in a displaced person camp. They were for 1 year. And by the way, there were people coming from Israel, the brigades. You know, there were people that Israelis that came to guide them and to teach them, and before the immigration, before doing Aliyah to Israel, so they supported him. So I met the guy that were responsible for the group from Israel. He was from the kibbutz for 1 year between May 45 to May 46. There was support from Israel, from people that came and guide them and help them and support them. And after my liberation, my father also said it in his testimony. I was in Lubeck, in Bergen-Belsen, and in Bergen-Belsen in a displaced person camp. This is I did not want to return to my country of origin because I had well-founded fear of persecution due to my social group affiliation. So the Polish people, the Polish citizens, even after the war, still after the Holocaust, still the Polish people still kept building. They were well off, but they knew that there is no chance that they will get it back. Here again, before the war, I was the owner of 2 jewelry stores. So this is connected to before. I was jewelry stores in Krakow, especially in Krakowska, it's Street 35, etc. It says even the two addresses, exact access, and I could and did not want to return to my country of origin, as I had well-founded fear of persecution from the communist regime due to my civil background and beliefs. I lost my wife and daughter during the Nazis' persecution in my homeland. I was in Germany until March 46 after the liberation, and then came from there to Palestine. They came before the founding of okay. And here again, so this is we saw this, and
This is a very strong statement you just read.
yes,
He spent this time in the Holocaust being persecuted by the Nazis, and he knew as soon as he went to his former home, he
Yes.
would continue persecution.
yes,
He had no safe
To come.
place to be.
yes. He also said in I work here on October 15, 44. I was transferred from Plaszow to Sachsenhausen. I worked there as a watchmaker in a workshop. My prisoner number was 107642. During my stay in Sachsenhausen, I was struck on the head with an iron piece by an SSS squad leader on October 20, 44. He said even the date that he was struck. So this was he came in 15 of October, and in October 20 already struck on his head, and they needed them to work efficiently. So still they struck them on their head. I was hit so hard that I have a large scar on my head as a future evidence of my imprisonment in the Sachsenhausen. So this is the story.
This is the story.
Yeah.
And I wonder here today, looking in Tower A at Sachsenhausen, looking over the camp and thinking about what it means to you, what does it mean to remember him and to remember them and to tell your family story?
They will come here tomorrow. This is a very good feeling, and to speak with them about it so they have this. It's the for the next generation. They have the knowledge with their family, with their children. They will have some information.
Heil Sachsenhausen. A jak będę jutro wzdychał lewą nóżką, ci zawtikam. Heil, es lebe Gold, o Kampf.